I decided to open the museum in Lytton because there is such a large Chinese history here, both from gold mining and from the railway history. So in 1980, we bought a lot in town. We were told shortly after that there was a Chinese joss house or temple on that property. And so we researched that history, and sure enough, that was true. So over a period of time, many years, I thought somebody should put a memorial to the Chinese people there, because people in Lytton even didn't remember that the Chinese had had that temple there. So at that time, I just decided it would be possible for me to do it, and so we went ahead starting to develop the museum. I think it's really important to tell the Chinese story of what people did in this area, but not only in this area, it affects what happened in all of Canada at that time. The June 30th fire that occurred in Lytton was devastating to my museum, of course, because the building was destroyed, but more than that, the artifacts, which were so essential to that story and where people's personal collections were gone. So for me, that was a big heartache that I've lost that part of the history. For the town itself, though, it's much greater. Many people lost their homes, many people lost their businesses, and on top of that, they cannot return immediately. So they are afraid and floundering right now, not knowing what their future is. Within my family, 2 of my children lost their homes, and my daughter lost her business, and I lost the museum. But that is devastating to us, but we still have a place to live, we still have our income, and we still have our family business here at Kumsheen. So in that regard, we're fortunate. I feel very sad, particularly for the young people or retired people who don't know what their future now is in Lytton. And we all chose to live in Lytton because it's a friendly little town, and so we all want to come back. Yeah, I've decided to rebuild the museum for 2 reasons. I'm still passionate about telling that story of the Chinese people. I'm hoping that I can rebuild and do it in a similar fashion, or at least as good a fashion as I did before. But the second reason also is I want all of the businesses in Lytton to return. I want us all to rebuild and put life back into our community. And so if I can start by doing it, I have the means to do it with the museum. The insurance will cover most of the payment, and so I feel pretty strongly about putting the building back up and perhaps changing it to a bit more of a digital format depending on what I get for artifacts, but I think I can still tell a story there. I believe there's 2 things that the community, either Chinese community or others, could help me with in this project. If any funding was available that I could apply towards the cost of rebuilding the actual building, that would be greatly appreciated. The other thing is, if anybody had artifacts that they would care to donate, that would help the collection come back to what it was prior to the fire. My goal for the museum is to try to replicate the same museum that I had before. It sounds like that might be a 2-year process. In that case, my insurance policy will cover most of the cost of putting up the building, but I could be as much of as $30,000 shortfall, and that's primarily because the cost of building materials has gone up so much in the last 2 years. But the other area that I could really use help is if people had artifacts. I can purchase some, but to get quality artifacts, it'd be much nicer if they came from the community. The last thing I'd like to say is how much I would really appreciate any help with the museum, any artifacts that are donated, and of course they'd be most welcome. And I thank you for listening to me today.